What's going on, guys, and welcome to today's video. And today we are finally getting some transmission pan protection on cheap Jeep. And we've got this really cool transmission pan skid plate because there is not a lot of options for the second gen Grand Cherokee for the transmission pan. This is kind of your only option, but the cool thing is this would work on any Dodge Ram, Jeep Grand Cherokee, anything with the Chrysler 545 transmission pan, because it uses the transmission pan bolts to bolt up to the transmission. So we'll need to get this thing in the shop, up in the air, get the transmission pan pulled down, because we are going to need to beat the dents out of the transmission pan, because the last two times we've went out with this thing, we have hit the transmission pan, and the last time it almost tore through the pan. So that's why this thing was very overdue. So we'll do a quick look underneath so you can see what we're working with the damage, and then we will get into the shop, get it up on the lift, and get this installed. So if we take a quick look underneath, we can see that we have smashed the transmission pan here and here, and this one is really deep, really gouged into the pan. So that is hopefully what we are taking care of today with the skid plate.
Alright guys, we're going to see if I can get this transmission pan pulled down without completely covering myself in transmission fluid. Now I do have a reusable lube locker gasket already installed on this pan, and I did replace the filters about 20,000 miles ago, so I am not going to replace the filters. But if you have not recently done a filter change, it would be a good time to do it now. So I'm just going to be pulling the pan, knocking these dents out of it, and then we will be bolting the pan back up with the skid plate.
Alright guys, now that we've got the pan off, I went ahead and beat all the dents out of the pan as nice and smooth as I could. And now we can kind of see how the skid plate will slide over the transmission pan. And it is honestly pretty tight, so we aren't really losing too much ground clearance, but it will definitely add some protection to the pan.
So like I said, I am running a aftermarket reusable gasket, which makes this a little bit nicer of a process. But we will get the pan bolted up through the bolt holes that aren't being used by the skid plate, and then we will get the skid plate on. And the skid plate does come with longer bolts for the bolt holes that have the skid plate with it. So here is the bag of longer bolts that comes with the skid plate, so we can bolt the skid plate up to the tranny pan and have enough thread engagement into the actual transmission. So now that we've got all of the bolts started, we can go ahead and start tightening them up. And honestly, I was very worried that we were not going to be lined up with the bolt holes just with a skid plate bolting up to the tranny pan. I worried it was going to be a mess and you're going to be bending, but honestly this thing fit really well. So let's tighten it up, we'll get some fluid in it, and kind of get our final thoughts on it.
Alright, so we got the skid plate all bolted up, and honestly this thing fits really cool. So I will show you guys the final fit and finish of this thing. Now keep in mind I painted it, it came bare metal, so the poor paint quality is of my doing, but it is just a skid plate and going to get destroyed on the rocks, so I wasn't too concerned with that. So we'll take a quick look at it. So yeah, cool fitting skid plate that is tucked up really high, and at least with the Jeep Grand Cherokees, there is no other aftermarket solutions for a transmission skid plate. Nothing that bolts to the frame, so this is the only option that bolts to the transmission pan bolts. Now, ideally, if I had my way, I would not have one bolted to the pan bolts, because if for some reason, if you hit that hard enough, hung up on it, in theory could shear the transmission pan bolts, which would be a horrible ordeal. But I've already hit this pan 3 times, and this is the only option for this second generation Grand Cherokee. So it was either this or nothing. So threw this on, and we'll go out and play with it and see how it holds up. Cool thing is about this, it kind of makes it universal, because you could bolt this onto a Dodge Ram, Jeep Grand Cherokee, 2nd gen, 3rd gen, anything with the 545 transmission pan. So it's kind of cool that you could put it on anything. Well guys, hopefully if you've got a 545 transmission equipped Jeep, Dodge, whatever, this is at least something that will give you an option if you do go out and play in the rocks, in the dirt, in the mud, for a little more protection. So, as always guys, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.